And do we have a quorum? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, you've got a quorum if you want to get started.
Sure. I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This meeting is going to be held in a hybrid format under the Albemarle County Continuity of Government Ordinance, with some members meeting in person at the North Branch Library and others joining us online via the hybrid format. Thank you all very much for being here. Let's see, we'll start with announcements. I just want to say, sorry, I missed our last meeting of the last meeting of last year. Thank you all very much for being here at the first meeting of this year. I think it might be worth just taking a moment as we start the new year here to acknowledge that this has been a really difficult one for many in the JMRL family this past year. And so I don't often speak on behalf of the board, but today I'd like to share our condolences with everyone who has lost someone in this past year. And I hope that the work that we do here together can continue to make the library a place of comfort and escape and community for so many people. So thank you to each of you for all the work that you do to help try to make that a reality. On a personal level, one announcement I don't often take time to talk about myself, but this feels like it's perhaps pertinent. I'm moving on from my position with the town of Scottsville and will be joining at the end of this month the Albemarle County finance staff. Looking forward to a new position, but it will change a little bit how I relate to some of the work that we do here on the board. I'm going to have to put some firewalls up between myself and our financial dealings with the county, which should be interesting to see. But I hope that that's a minor adjustment that will allow me to continue to do the things that I enjoy doing with all of you. Are there any other announcements before we get going that anybody would like to make?
I would just like to say I've been in the Louisa Library quite often recently, but I was there right after the our big storm, the first one, and everything had just gotten back to normal. And there was a woman came in who needed some help with faxing and things that she was not upset about, but concerned because she hadn't been able to get, our post office was even closed in Louisa, but she hadn't been able to get any help and she had to get stuff right out. But in any event, I was doing something and I watched the interaction with one of our librarians, and she was so helpful, and the woman was so grateful, and she was teaching her how to do it as well as learning it, and then came over and it just reinforced for me how important all the different services we have, but also just the niceness and kindness of the library staff. And the woman was, you know, just couldn't have been more complimentary when she left, and was so happy. So that was a bright day in a snowstorm.
Wonderful.
But it was very nice to see that people did appreciate and understand.
Well, thank you for sharing, Wendy. That's wonderful.
That was fun.
Any other announcements anyone would like to make?
Thomas?
Yes.
Don't forget what you need to accept the dispose of the minutes from the previous meeting as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. Yes. Do I have a motion to approve our minutes from last month's meeting?
I have a suggested change, very
Please.
minor, but if you will humor me with a 4-minute soapbox, I'd like to use this as an example to kind of advocate for a certain thought process. It's very subtle and sort of minor, but it's in the library director's report. The thought process is whenever we communicate to the public, whether it's a 5-year plan or minutes or anything on the website, we need to take a step back and think about how an outsider, if not the context, might interpret that. Because if it's for each other, we know a lot of context or background, behind some of these little short statements. And I like to think of something called, in my mind, I think of it as sort of defensive communication. You're familiar with defensive driving, where you got to assume the other guy is going to do the worst possible thing, and in advance, kind of anticipate that possibility. So, defensive communication means if there's a skeptical observer who doesn't have the context, what's kind of the worst way they can interpret something, and if it's easy to provide just a little more context to mitigate that possibility or guard against it, then throw it in. So in this case, the sentence would be, and again, this is not a big deal, but I do think the mindset is important to kind of have in the back of our mind. So the next sentence is, here we go. Director Plunkett reported JMRL has distributed 1895 rapid COVID tests to patrons so far. So we all know that was through a VDH stack program. A skeptical observer who just walked in and just read that might say, hey, why is JMRL purchasing with library funds 1895 health kits and distributing them? I found JMRL to be a exchange of information and access to information. I found public health organizations to do the public health. Why is JMRL doing public health stuff? So again, we all know that's not the case, but just by thinking of that mindset in advance and just adding the 4 words via the VDH staff program, we would provide the context. So soapbox over. That's my constructive suggestion, but just some background about why I'm thinking in that way.
Sure, I appreciate the background there. The perspective is very helpful, and I think that's a reasonable amendment to make to the minutes here, to add those 4 letters or 4 words via the VDH grant. If everybody's okay with that, do we have a motion to accept these minutes pending that one change?
I move that we accept the minutes
Thank you, Lisa, go ahead.
pending the change, that we acknowledge the Public Health Department's support of that initiative so that we can provide context for future observers, and that we in the future consider this type of contextualization when making statements such as the one Mike just pointed out.
Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Sounds like a motion that passes to me. Thank you very much, Michael. I appreciate the input there. David, do we have anybody interested in public comment here with us today?
Nobody physically in the room. If anybody who is attending on Zoom would like to make public comment, you can raise your hand or use the raise hand feature now, and the chair will recognize you for a public comment. Going once.
Okay. Thank you very much, David. Moving along, we'll get to our continuing education. I see we have Tim Carrier here with us from the Young Adult Services Manager for JMRL. Thank you very much, Tim, for being here. I'm excited to learn a little more about this Beanstack reading challenge with budding readers in the house. So please,
I know.
take it away.
I think I'm still reading. I hit that button and then I think I'm reading, the timer started and it's never stopped. So I was waiting for today, so you tell me how to get out of reading unstuck.
All right, that's wonderful. Wonderful that you've already been trying it. That's terrific. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me here for the presentation today. And of course, as has already been mentioned, I'm here to talk about this new online platform that JMRL now has access to called Beanstack. Let me just take a minute to share my screen. And just a second here. while I get the slideshow started. All right, as I said, this is Beanstack, and this is a service that we have just started using here at JMRL at the start of this year. To give you a little bit of a background, it's a web service and mobile app tool that is used for by libraries to create, manage, and measure year-long challenges, summer reading challenges, any type of reading challenge that the library may choose to present. In the past, we've had feedback from the public who have really enjoyed our manual summer reading challenge over the last few years. And some of that feedback has included interest in participating in other challenges at other times of the year. And with this new online service, that makes it even more possible for us to present other challenges. And the way it works is that patrons can access the program through the jmrl.org website or through a free mobile app on their phone or their other handheld device in order to register, track reading, and earn digital badges or sometimes other prizes in challenges that we offer. The service was made available to us through funding from the Library of Virginia that provides access to Beanstack at Virginia Public Libraries through September 30th. And we will be able to continue that service after September 30th if the state is unable to extend the access. Since the access started, a team of several staff members have been working to get this ready for JMRL. That's included Angela Critics and Catherine Fay, Kayla Payne, as well as assistance from Jennifer McAdam Miller and Sarah Elizabeth to help get the program onto or connected to the library's website. Let's see, as I mentioned, the current challenge is right now on the website. You can find information about it right at jmrl.org. Plus, we also have a special challenges page that provides a little more information about Beanstack. That includes some FAQs for members of the public who are curious about how to get started, how to sign up for an account, information about the Winter Reading Challenge, which is how we started, how we did a soft launch of the program with the Winter Reading Challenge, which will continue now through February 15th, and that's open to patrons and staff. Patrons can sign up anytime on their own, or they can contact any branch for assistance with registration. They track their reading by minutes to earn digital badges, and they can also complete tasks similar to what we do during the annual summer challenge, actual activities that they can earn badges for. In the winter challenge, there's a total of 16 badges that patrons can participate in, and once they've completed any 8 of the badges, they have essentially finished the program. All right, now creating an account is really basic, and I thought I would take just a minute to just create a temporary account just to show you how that happens. You can go right to the Beanstack page. There's a sign in for the time that you have actually started your account already. You can sign in anywhere in the upper right-hand corner. About midway down the page, there's a place to create your account. You can register yourself as an individual. If you're a parent and want to register your entire family under one account, you can also do that. Teachers, group leaders at camps and so forth can also register a class or a group. So there are many different ways to create an account. And when you create the group or family accounts, it's an umbrella account under the, I guess, the account creator, the parent or the group leader. What I'll do real quickly is create a temporary account as an individual. And it'll ask, have you used Beanstack to participate in a reading challenge? I'll say no. And I will register just myself. Okay, one nice thing about Beanstack is when you register for an account, you can create your account with a a username and a password. You're not required to use your email address to create the account, but as you'll see here, there is a little notification here saying that it's recommended that when you register for your account, you do include your phone number or an email address, because for the accounts, for the challenges that have prize drawings, that is the way that staff can notify you if you want a prize. So real quickly, sign up here. Okay, and because this is a temporary account, I will leave the email and phone numbers blank. Password can be 6 characters. A drop-down menu to choose your primary library, and a place for age. There is an 18+ for all adult participants. And just by signing up, you get a badge already. So your very first badge is earned just for creating an account. And it indicates that you are now registered for winter reading, okay? Gives you the opportunity, if you want to add another adult, you can do that. If you want to add a child, you can also do that. And that's where the umbrella account starts. It will, anybody that you register at this point will be included, under the account that you've just created. Okay, in this case, I'll say no. And then it brings you up to your own page here, and it will give you the information. It will give you the information about the Winter Reading Challenge. Okay, and with the Winter Reading Challenge, it'll show you, it'll give you an overview, some encouragement that yes, you can do this. It's certainly something that is obtainable, achievable, and it will give you the information about the badges that are available. It will have logging badges. Those are the ones that you count your minutes. If you've read for 30 minutes, you are in the Fox badge. If you've read for an hour, you are in the one for hot cocoa. Then there are also activity badges, and those include activities. There's a reading recommendations. Children's services, young adult services, adult services have all created some reading lists. And those are on the Find It page of the library's catalog, and they're also linked in the badge information here. And so if you choose to read one of the books from the book list, you can click on that, read one, and click that information, and that will earn you that badge. So there are plenty of opportunities there. You can click onto your reading log on your page. It will give you things. If you have been reading for several days in a row, it will say that you're on a streak. If you want to log in reading and activities to your log, the blue bar up at the top next to the library's name will give you that opportunity. And I believe some comments were mentioned about how to start a reading timer. You can, if you want to sit down and read, but not have to keep checking your watch to see how long you've been reading, you can have your device or your computer start a reading timer, and that will keep the reading going on. And it should give you an opportunity to stop that. I may need to check that to start reading. Okay. And then there should be at the bottom of it something that says I'm done reading. So once you've completed your reading, you can turn that off. In addition, you can also, you can also go back to your log. Okay.
Oh, that's where it is.
There we go. Put that in there, and that indicates that I've logged another badge. That's right. Okay, and then there's a little X up at the top, and that'll take you back to the log page. All right. But yes, that's true. If you start the reading timer and forget to turn it off or are unable to turn it off, it keeps on logging you in and saying that you've read continually and all that. So that's right, exactly. Okay, and in a nutshell, that's how the accounts work. Let's see, let me move to the next slide real quickly. Just a couple more comments about the mobile app. If you if you use your phone or your handheld device, you can download the mobile app, the Beanstack Tracker mobile app, and basically access your account in exactly the same way. That can be downloaded. The app can be downloaded from the Apple Store or from Google Play. And once you've downloaded that, you log in the same way. It will ask you to indicate if you're with a school or a library or a bookstore. And then it will ask you to choose your library, and you can log in either by saying Jefferson Madison Regional Library, or you can use the initials, and that will get you in as well, just with JMRL. And then you log in with your username and your password, and it will bring up the log. It will bring up your statistics. It will bring up all the things that you can get on the desktop as well. So what's coming up? Well, obviously the Winter Challenge will continue through February 15th. We'll be working on getting some more challenges on the platform as well. You know that Children's Services had a successful 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program that has been done manually. Angela is working on getting this also launched on Beanstack. The Summer Reading Program Committee will be working to put the 2022 Summer Challenge on Beanstack this year, and then there will be other smaller challenges as well. Beanstack offers a lot of pre-made challenges that we can just use and drop into our program. That's what we did with the Winter Challenge. And then there are others that are built around themes, and of course we can also create challenges with the templates that they offer as well. So a lot of opportunities there for some fun and enjoyable challenges. Okay, and I think that's everything I have. Did anybody have any questions about it? And please feel free to log into the program and try the challenges yourself. I'll go ahead.
I know this has been on the website for a week or two. Did you?
Yes, we did a soft launch the first week of January, and as we work with more of the challenges, we'll continue to promote them, and obviously we'll certainly do a big push when we're ready to promote summer, of course.
So I'm just curious if you, besides Wendy, have any initial, like, you know, we've had 50 people sign up, or I know there hasn't been any promotion so far.
Sure, yeah, and we actually, even though it was a soft launch, we did do some promotion on Facebook and through a couple of other sources as well. And I checked the activity before coming to the meeting today, and there are over 150 active readers who have signed up, and that does include a number of staff as well. So it has gotten off to a good start. As it turned out, the first week we launched was also the week of the big snow, so that kind of slowed things down a little bit as well.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. I think this looks terrific. One question, aside from the winter and the winter challenge that's on there now, and the summer challenge that you have done historically that this will be replacing, are there any plans already in the works for other things throughout the year?
The existing 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten is planning to come onto Beanstack sometime in the near future. We've been discussing other challenges related to events and activities that are coming up, things like National Poetry Month, a few other related things like that. So we're still kind of in the discussion stage with a lot of those, but we're planning to make use of quite a few opportunities to offer a lot of different challenges for the public.
And is there an opportunity for public input on what those challenges could be?
That's a good question. We hadn't actually discussed how that would be. There is a place on the challenge page on the website where members of the public, if they have any questions about the challenge or any suggestions for us, can do that. And we've had a couple of people who, as they've just begun to start, they have had a couple of questions about it, and they've sent an email through that. And then Angela and Catherine and I especially monitor those, and we respond to them and help them to move through that. So that would be an opportunity for members of the public also to connect with us.
I could see, especially as you talked about how this could be set up for classroom reading challenges and that kind of thing. I could see some examples where, teachers might like to be able to do a sort of custom challenge within their own classroom or between classrooms or something like that, that could get people registered on the system and using it without necessarily doing a JMRL wide a challenge. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. That's one that we'll take a look at and see what kind of possibilities are there for that.
Well, thank you very much. Any other questions from anybody?
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Tim.
Thank you so much, Tim.
All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Looks like we don't have committee reports today, so we'll move right on to the first reading of the Interlibrary Loan Policy 4.32. David, you want to set that up?
Sure. The policy committee reviewed this before their December meeting and just had a few questions about some of the language in the first paragraph that we wanted to check on before bringing it back to the full library board for a reading. And we did get some confirmation on some points there from the state library. So I believe the policy committee is happy to have a first reading of this and to get any input today to see if there are any changes that need to be read before a potential vote in February. So to go through line by line here, there's some minor changes. We use ILL a lot, so just setting up that abbreviation. This Virginia Interlibrary Loan Code of 1989 and guidelines, when we asked the state library to find this, they had to go digging through the archives. There was only one hard copy left, and they were no longer sure how relevant it was. But they are going to review it thanks to our request. So there's JMRL driving state business. In the end, I think that the policy committee was okay with a blanket statement there that says that the library, JMRL, will follow any relevant state of Virginia codes and guidelines. So whatever the state ends up adopting, we'll make sure that we're not breaking any of the rules there, excuse me. Similar for the National Interlibrary Loan Code 2001 has now been renamed by the ALA, the Interlibrary Loan Code for the United States, with no date on it. So we just updated the language there. Mike, stop me if I'm massacring anything. In the second paragraph, the decision was made to remove the specific $3 fee per item. The $3 fee is still being charged, but instead will be covered in the fines and fees schedule, which the board reviews periodically. So it'll be discussed while the board discusses other fines and fees. So rather than being set here and then have to be changed in multiple places, it would be set in that other document and just change when that other document is changed. And I think it was removed. The wording was to offset postage costs. Well, it's not just postage costs. There's additional staff costs too that go into that. So we just made that more generic and added the sentence fees are set annually by the library board and circulation fines and fees, just so to clarify that. And then let's see. I think the final paragraph there, when materials are lost or the one that's got strike through in it. When materials are lost or returned late, the borrowing privileges of both the patron and JMRL are jeopardized. Patrons who abuse ILL borrowing privileges for these reasons will find their ILL borrowing privileges suspended after a warning. So we had some discussion about what that means and decided to try and tweak that a little bit and ended up with the red there in the final paragraph. Because JMRL relies on good relationships with its lending partners, a patron's repeated failure to follow JMRL's ILL procedures may result in the loss of ILL borrowing privileges. And here are some examples: not returning items in good condition and on time, and not picking up requested items on time.
And I think the motivation there was really to communicate more or less the same information, but just to kind of improve the tone. So it's really, that's a tone update.
Yeah, we don't necessarily, if somebody drops a book in a puddle, we don't need to accuse them of abuse, basically.
I think this looks great. I think it makes a lot of sense to move the fee structure to the separate document and limit the number of documents that we need to update whenever those changes are made.
I think it would just be that if there's any other feedback on this, to send it to Mike for the policy committee to review in February before this comes back for a potential vote in February.
Yeah, I agree with the changes that that we're describing here. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for the work on this. I think this looks like another great update. Oh, this is an exciting one for me. David, would you please, as we move on in the agenda here, and we'll look for that policy vote at next month's meeting. Would you set up for us here the wildflower planting grant?
Sure. So there was some discussion last month about the grant procedures that JMRL have in place. So this is kind of two birds, one stone here. But remember last month, there was a grant that was potentially going to come in that we needed a quick decision on whether or not to accept. The board has to accept all grants. And a question came up from the board as to whether or not that procedure was still necessary. Our understanding from the staff was that it was required in order to meet the auditors that the city contracts with, in order to meet their, whatever their goals are there. So we did reach back out to the city to talk about that, and they want to keep that in place basically. So no matter what the cost is, they still want the library board to vote on all incoming grants. So for now, that's the procedure that we have to follow. They did say that it would be possible for the board to accept a grant and then later change their minds and return the money. So if for some reason, it's more the other way that I was concerned about. It's, something that we would have to make, the staff would have to accept before the board had a chance to see it. But they did say that it would be okay to take more time than needed there. So that if that's possible, great. But here's another example where we have several grants applied for this branch to support local pollinator gardens, this plant wildflowers branch. I believe that the agenda that you all have says Scottsville and Central Libraries, but the Nelson Memorial Library has also applied for this grant, which is great because they lost such a beautiful garden in the expansion for good reason, but now need to put it back up again. So these three branches all applied for this grant that is up to $1,000 and some materials to set up pollinator gardens at their libraries. But we heard on Friday, which was the date at which the granting agency was going to make a decision, that they had had so many applications from across the country that they were pushing their decision-making process. So we do not know yet which or any of these three libraries would potentially receive these funds. I mean, the funds would come to JMRL, but they would be spent locally at each of those branches. So what I think the staff is asking for is the board to make a blanket move to accept these grants for these three branches individually, so that if any of the three of them got it, it would be okay for JMRL to say, yes, we accept these funds. So something along the lines of a motion to accept the plant wildflowers grant for any of the Scottsville, Central, or Nelson libraries.
Or any branch.
Or any branch, yeah, just in case there's.
For wildflowers here.
Any questions from board members on specifics about what the grant is, or as David explained, why we need to do the approving vote here?
I'm just seeing
I
the
thought it looked great when I went through it. Really a fun
Is that going to?
program.
We went to Scottsville not too long ago, and I know that she had plans to have more picnic tables. Are we saying that's sort of behind? Is that what they envision?
Well, Scottsville, as you know, recently freed up a bunch of space with the trees that came down in the area there. So I think this is part of a larger plan to try and get some landscaping over to if you're facing the library, to the left-hand side. There's my understanding of it. I don't think it would remove the total number of the seating that's out there. We might just have to rearrange.
Right. Because I know that's really important.
Yeah, a lot of people use for sure.
Mhm.
Okay. They've got room. Sounds great.
David, we're still on screen share here, if you don't mind. Thank you. So do I hear a motion to accept the Plant Wildflowers grant for any branch of JMRL, should we be fortunate enough to receive any awards?
I move that.
Thank you, Tony. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you all very much. The motion will pass. And David, please keep us updated.
Yes, I can report, hopefully I can report back next month or via email on the status of that.
Okay. So moving along here, director's contract term. David and I talked about this a little bit last week before. We did the performance evaluation for David back in the summer, and historically that has been a summertime business item. But the director's contract has a renewal period that ends in December 31st of any given year. So we have a little bit of housekeeping here to do, as David is working now on an expired contract. What I propose is to extend this to bring it a little more in line with when we do the annual review, and give us an opportunity to make those decisions together and make any, changes that are appropriate to compensation or personnel or whatever at those times. So we ordinarily, as you know, do reviews of performance under closed session, reviews of compensation under closed session. I'd very much like to not go into closed session today, given our hybrid format, and to leave those elements of the conversation out of this and just sort of look at this procedural element of it, about extending his contract term temporarily to our next evaluation period. David, I think we said May was usually when we did.
I believe so. It's on the board agenda, the schedule. Hold on.
So I think what we had discussed was, since the review usually takes place in May, we would punt this to June the following month, and give ourselves as a board a little bit of time coming out of the performance evaluation part of looking at the executive director position, and give ourselves a little bit of time before we renew the contract in case there are any changes that need to be made.
It is May for the evaluation, Thomas.
Okay, thank you, David. So yeah, what I would propose today is, if there are no qualms with it, that we take a vote to extend David's contract to the end of June of this year, 2022. And then that, as I said, just brings it a little bit more in line with when we do the review. Any questions about that?
Yes, I have a question. Does that mean that salary would stay frozen for like the 6 months or whatever?
Yeah, and that's generally JMRL salary changes take place in July. Our fiscal year begins July 1, so it would be very odd for there to be a salary change between now and then. Anyway.
That's a good point. Thank you, David. Yeah, that's another kind of issue that we have here, is with the contract renewing in December. It leaves open the possibility of that contract change in the middle of a budget year, when we've already approved the budget for the director's salary for that year. So this, again, gives us an opportunity, if there are any last minute tweaks that need to happen before we vote on that new budget, that we're able to go ahead and do that. But yes, for the time being, it means the salary stays the same for the next 6 months.
So I move that we extend the current director's contract until the date that you've mentioned.
June 30th, 2022 would be the date. Thank you.
June.
Second?
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Before we move on, could I review something from the screen share, just also to refresh my memory, but also everyone else? If you go back to the board calendar, please. My recollection, as you're pulling it up, is that there are 3 sort of director related milestones. One is the performance review and now the contract renewal. One is the discussion and joint identification of director goals for the year. So remind me when that takes place.
That's in June.
So that would be, we would be having the evaluation, in May would be the evaluation still, and then June would be review the goals and set goals. And then, if I recall correctly, there's sort of a mid-year progress report often. And yeah, I seem to remember that now that we're talking about it, it was sort of a.
Yeah, so that would be today, library director mid-year evaluation if requested.
I personally think it's a good practice to just, hey, here's what we.
I think what we did last year is I gave an update on the progress towards the goals that had been set.
Right. And that's more of what I would be interested in more than an evaluation per se.
Sure.
Just keep everyone on the same page with here's what the goals we said, here's what we're doing, here's where we are.
Yeah, we can do that in February.
Yeah, so I would suggest that for February this year, and then maybe a reminder of. I had thought of that in December for some reason, but December and January about pretty much the same thing. So.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. I'm sorry I missed that. I completely agree. I think if we can approach it as that sort of just catch up on the goals that we set, what do you need our support to get done before the end of the year? Yeah, that seems perfect.
Sounds good.
Great.
We'll do it in December. Now
That's might be why I have it. Yeah. Anyways, it's either way.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Great point. Old business, moving right along there. David, you want to provide the update on fiscal year 23's budget?
Sure. So every one of JMRL's 5 jurisdictions has had a chance to meet with myself and at least one trustee to discuss budget planning for fiscal year 23 using the board's priorities, which number one that we've pushed for is for the $15 minimum wage adjustment. The second is for cost of living increase for staff next year of 2%. And the third was for the additional operational changes that the personnel committee passed in the fall. We have had very good meetings, very receptive with all jurisdictions. Most of them understand the issues that the library is facing with trying to raise minimum compensation, as well as the ongoing need to pay all the way throughout the pay scale to keep up with the market right now. So I really appreciated new trustees taking the time to get to meet their jurisdictions as part of this process. It's always an enjoyable time of year for the staff from the jurisdictions to talk to library staff and really get to understand their budget process. So right now we are waiting on the jurisdictions to start sending their proposed budgets from the administrations into the elected officials. So that will be happening over the next month or so, some of them even later. Generally, the first few are recently have been Louisa and Albemarle and Charlottesville perhaps. And then Nelson tends to wait a little later in the calendar year before they make an official recommendation. So we'll start to see then what the jurisdictions are thinking about funding for JMRL. All the feedback I got was that our fiscal year 23 budget was a very reasonable request. They were happy with library services, especially happy with library services, I think, during a pandemic. I feel like the last 2 years have only strengthened our partnership with all 5 jurisdictions as we really had to rely on them, and they've had to rely on us for resources and for making things available to the public. So I'm looking forward to a positive budget season. I may be calling on some of you to come visit, whether remotely or in person, some of the elected officials as they discuss JMRL's budget during their own budget process, but we have yet to be invited or asked. So we'll keep our eyes out, and especially if there's an area where there's a difference between what we're seeking and what is being recommended, then we'll likely want to go and state the case for the library's fiscal year 23 budget directly to the elected officials.
Great. Thank you, David. Any questions there? Well, I think we'd all be happy to help come to those meetings, do whatever we can to make the case for you, David.
Do you have a question, Mike?
You said that's your report. I just want to make sure which agenda item we're in.
That's the budget update. I'm sorry, that's old business.
We'll move right on to your library director's report, though.
Okay.
Take it
Now-
away.
What?
Yeah, I have something I'm curious about, and we'll see. I think we're going to cover it anyway. So.
Yeah, so quite a bit to cover here. I'll start with JMRL's COVID response. I sent you all an email last week informing you that JMRL did move into, or I guess two weeks ago I sent it, we moved into tier 2 of our COVID response plan, which was the first time we'd had to move backwards in almost 2 years here. So tier 2 looks a lot like tier 1. Masking is the biggest difference. It's required at all locations. In-person programming is on hold. So all programming right now is virtual or outside. Outside is a bit difficult so far in January. JMRL will move back to tier 2 when 3 of 5 jurisdictions are back under 10% positivity for a 2-week period. Data is starting to move that way. So I personally, I should say, I'm fairly optimistic that sometime in February, we'll be able to move back to our tier 1 services, which would largely mean allowing some in-person programming again, and also that masks would be recommended, not required. So that's where we are. I know there was some talk about this last month when we were still in tier 1, and I think the email I sent basically said that the big change that the EPC looked at was the fact that what we were calling tier 1 was no longer tier 1 at this point anyway, when we were going to require masks of people and not be able to do programming. The biggest concern for JMRL, for most organizations, and certainly for public libraries across the nation, has been staffing and being able to keep staff healthy and safe and have enough staff on hand in order to keep libraries open. JMRL, knock on wood, has been fairly fortunate in that throughout Omicron. We have had some positive cases. We do have a staff dashboard that's up and available for you all to see on our intranet. That shows the total number of cases. So coming into Omicron, we'd only had 2 in a year and a half, and that got doubled. So I believe it was 4 in Omicron, but still we have been able to very carefully maneuver through this. Large thanks to our partners at the city of Charlottesville, who are offering testing for staff 3 times a week, basically. Thanks also to the vigilance of our own staff, who are very good about social distancing and masking while being able to perform their duties. We're not out of the woods yet in Omicron, certainly by any means, but there's some hope on my behalf that in the weeks to come, we'll see a little bit of sunlight there. So we can pause here if there are any questions specifically about JMRL's COVID response, Thomas, or anything anyone wants to ask.
Anyone have questions?
Well, I would just echo your thanks to staff for being vigilant, because not only in the workplace, but obviously in personal lives, they've been cautious, because a lot of people are getting this latest round at a much higher rate than it sounds like 4 out of, or 2 in the, out of 150. So
I think it's 4 new
okay.
since then, so 6 total.
Either way, it sounds pretty low relative to the general populace, and I think that's probably a reflection on what choices staff are making, both in the workplace but outside of the workplace.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Trying to do what they want, but yep.
I just want to also add, just to thank you, David, for your vigilance on this. I know you are working hard to balance the need for serving the public, but also keeping people safe and healthy. And we've known from not just the story that Wendy shared earlier today, but from throughout the entire time, how essential library services are to our community. So we don't want to risk that. And so I just really appreciate your leadership in thinking carefully through these challenges.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Lisa.
saying that, Lisa. Yeah.
That's the big message that we would give to any staff, that, people miss story time and they miss programs, and masking is uncomfortable for everybody. But the biggest message is that being careful now allows us to stay open and provide library services. If we were caught up in a wave here, we wouldn't be able to do that. We would have to step backwards. So we were talking briefly before the meeting started about the testing program that Mike mentioned. And so just to give you all an update on that, the VDH is currently seeking a new source for antigen tests. The vendor that they were using before is no longer available. Everybody's seen the supply chain issues there and just the demand, really. So currently there are none available. So the whole state is on pause for that. We did have 5,000 to give away in the week between Christmas and Thanksgiving. and all but a handful of them were gone in one business day. 1,200 of them went out at the Central Library. So it was quite the undertaking by staff to make that happen as well. So we're happy to partner with the VDH to make that happen. But right now the demand is so high that the library couldn't keep up no matter how many we had. So last week we got the remainder of a shipment that had been on the way before, and it was 600, and they were gone by lunchtime. I think it was Wednesday last week, except for a handful of locations. Gordon Avenue didn't open until noon, so theirs were later. And I think Scottsville still had a few left the next morning. So at any rate, it's a great program, and we'd like to continue to participate, but it is on hold while the VDH attempts to find more tests.
Great. I know that was a huge resource. There were people, folks trying to travel and those kind of things for the holidays, and it was very difficult to find tests. So the idea that the fact that library did have some, I thought that was really a great idea. So it just shows that it's working.
Yeah, it was a good program. And now, of course, there's also the option for people to request their own at-home tests from the federal government. So I think that might take a little strain off of this moving forward too. Okay, on to the fun things. I didn't mention this during the ILL reading that we did, but I am happy to report that after meeting with the university, we are going to resume the free interlibrary loan for JMRL patrons from the university libraries. So that was put on hold at the last summer, basically, as the UVA libraries prepared for their students to come back in and to reopen their buildings so that the public would have access to them. We've been in talks with them since then, and we're going to resume that program. That cardholders at JMRL will be able to request items that are in lending items that are in the university's catalog. And on a weekly basis, we'll have a delivery set up and then disperse them throughout the JMRL area for no cost. So that $3 fee would not be a factor there for those. And the other good news there is that a lot of materials, while the libraries were closed, that the university had were part of a HATI Trust agreement, where basically they had digital copies of them. But because their libraries were closed and the physical copies weren't available to loan, they weren't able to, they weren't able to loan the physical copies while the electronic copies were going out and the libraries weren't open. But now that the libraries are open, the university believes they'll be able to do that. So quite a few requests that we got were for items that we couldn't fill, and we're expecting to be able to fill those here moving forward, basically. Okay.
Wonderful, thank you.
JMRL is also seeking to revive our joint scholarship program with the NAACP of Charlottesville, Albemarle. That program was on hold last year and the year before during COVID. We're going to have a brochure to share soon. I've had meetings with the head of the NAACP and the head of the education committee there. And the goal, of course, is to increase overall diversity in professional librarianship by encouraging students to get some work experience at public library. We're hoping to increase the stipend. I need to talk to the Friends of the Library about this as well, because currently the stipend wasn't going to be, wouldn't average out to $15 an hour, basically. So we want to make sure that it's worth a student's time. But it's a $2,000 scholarship and then a stipend for 200 hours of work. So I'll share that information with you as soon as it's ready to go, and we'll work with the Charlottesville Albemarle NAACP in order to select winners, although applications are accepted all throughout the JMRL service area, so Green, Louisa, and Nelson as well. We got some really good publicity for the community journals offering, which is the brainchild of reference librarian Abby Davis. These community journals are housed at the Central Library, but can be placed on hold, picked up at any branch. So someone checks out a journal, they look like an old composition book that we would have had in school. They'll have the opportunity to read what others have written and also to write something themselves. On the inside cover, they'll find some basic guidelines for participation. Everything must be kid-friendly or kind, basically, or it will be removed. In addition, don't mark or deface anyone else's entries. But there are 10 topics available in a series, fun, light, upbeat, more serious. So childhood memories, poetry, community sketchbook, a day in my life, coping with COVID, gratitude, ideas for the library, take a recipe, leave a recipe, a guide for new parents, and citizen scientists, document our Earth. So this is just a really cool idea where the community can share their resources with each other and do it in an analog way, not on Nextdoor or Facebook or Reddit. So I encourage you to check one of those out and see what's in them. Just a few more things. The Virginia Library Association has adopted their legislative program for the current session. They've got three priorities. One is affirming the freedom to read statement that the American Library Association has. The second is increasing state aid by $2.5 million statewide in both 2023 and 2024. So as board members who have been here for a while know, I may be in touch with you all individually if the VLA Legislative Committee identifies any representatives from your jurisdiction that are going to be crucial stakeholders in making this happen. So if a representative that governs an area that you are representing, for example, is on the budget committee or is a conferee, then likely we will ask to send some letters out and reach out to folks. This would be a huge get of $5 million over 2 years. State aid for libraries has been growing in the last 5 years. We've gotten successfully some funding added after a long time of being stagnant, but we're still not close to full funding. It's been a while since I've done a continuing education on state aid for the library board. So Thomas, you and I can talk about maybe me coming back with some figures to show you where we are now and how far we need to get. It's especially important for JMRL as we get the second largest portion of state aid in the state of Virginia. In the 70s, the state incentivized library systems, jurisdictions to get together and share library services. One of the biggest carrots there was we're going to provide this state aid for you, which JMRL relies on for almost the entirety of our materials budget. So while that has grown some in the past few years, it really isn't where it should be by the state code. And JMRL does rely on it very heavily. So I look forward to making that push and I hope it goes well. The last thing, where's number 3? Continuing support of the Library of Virginia. So just a generic push from the Virginia Library Association to ask the state to continue financially supporting the state library. 2 more things. JMRL did finally receive our draft fiscal year 21 audit on Friday afternoon. So getting it in by the end of January, although really I expected it before the beginning of the year. So I will be speaking to the auditors about the timeline there. So we have one last acknowledgement to do and an internal review, but a final copy should be available for you all and to be able to post on our website and send to our jurisdictions in the next few weeks. No significant findings, which is good. Again, it has been a while since we have had any auditors come in to talk to the library board about what the process is. And Thomas, that's always an option to have them come and give a report on the audit. And finally, the same page announcement was made the other day. This is the program that JMRL participates in partnership with the Virginia Festival of the Book. We bring an author into the area that's coming to the book festival and feature a book of theirs as a community reading project. There are book club discussions across JMRL and various other programmings. I'm hoping to get somebody from that committee to come in and do a continuing ed for you all to talk about the history of that program and what the plans are for this year. This year's author is Tracy Chi, and the book is called We Are Not Free. So I'm looking forward to reading that.
David, just because I know we're testing new AV equipment here, I just want to make you aware this is the second time your microphone has all of a sudden switched to one that sounds much further away.
Did everybody have the same problem?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You're back now.
Now you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
There was one brief one earlier in the meeting and then this one here. Where just briefly for a moment, you sounded like we were picking you up from a microphone further away.
Okay. Ashley reports the same issue on the city's end. Okay. I will Kayla is listening. So Kayla, let's go check it out and see what the problem is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Sure.
That's all I have to report.
Thank you very much. Any questions for David? I'm curious to know, does anybody, how interested would people be in getting a report from the auditors now that that draft audit has been submitted to the library? Maybe as one of our continuing education opportunities.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Resounding silence there for a moment.
Well, no, I mean, I've read audit reports. I mean, it's part of my job at the university. I read audit reports. They are not the most stimulating reading, but you can occasionally uncover things that, if you sort of read between the lines, can make goals going forward. So I think it's probably a good idea.
I think it would be worthwhile. I see that as really if not the biggest, one of the biggest responsibilities that we cover here is passing that budget and taking this as an opportunity to get some feedback on how did we do. You know, what do we need to be aware of going forward? I think would be worthwhile for us.
I agree.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, if there's no disagreement,
good.
then David, let's consider putting that on agenda. I don't know what their schedule is going to look like, but if we could get somebody in representing the accountant to walk us through that finance report in the coming months, I think that would be wonderful.
I'll reach out and ask them. I think it's a good idea too, because also they can, in layman's terms, hopefully explain what you should be looking for, so that if you have to read it yourself, you can know what the key points
That
are.
would be helpful.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other matters that anybody would like to bring up that were not on the agenda here this month? Yes, Wendy.
I just have a few things I'd like to share from the Friends meeting we had. And one of which is you all might want to mark your calendars for February 10th so you can participate in the virtual trivia that they're going to promote and offer. It's literary love trivia on Zoom, and you can get a team together and participate, 4-person teams, or you can just register yourself and they'll put you on a team with the other individuals. It's $15 a person, and the fun thing is you get to participate and test your knowledge against all your friends, family, and anybody else who's on. And also, all of the money, of course, goes to the Friends of JMRL and the programming at the library. So it should be fun. If it's cold outside, you can get a group together and you can just visit and play games on Zoom for a good cause. So that is going to be February 10th at 7 o'clock. And if you go to the Friends page, JMRLfriends.org, there's a registration and a little description of it. So it might be fun to see if you could get a team together. Next, also another date to remember is the book sale will be April 2nd through 10th. And it will still be at the Albemarle Square Shopping Center. Put that as well on your calendar, April 2nd through 10th, and February 10th for your Zoom trivia challenge. Just a reminder.
Thank you very much. That sounds great.
That's it. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Anybody else?
I had wanted to mention from time to time, David sends us information, links to training opportunities from sometimes the state library and also other organizations. Kind of in the last month, one of those that came to us was a series of trainings sponsored by the state library, if I'm getting it correct, about use of social media. And there were sort of they were kind of overlapping, but they presented it 3 times for 3 different kind of stakeholders: employees, employers, and trustees. And it just sort of went over use of social media, both within the workplace and outside the workplace, how that can affect organizations, and then a lot of the legal issues involved in both directions. So I attended the one for trustees, and I saw Alita there virtually as well. And I found it to be very illuminating.
Yeah, it's Michael. Can't think of the first name, but she was very good, and she was able to present the information where you could understand what she was talking about.
Yeah, there were kind of case studies,
Right,
of, real life situations. So I just want to that has been archived. All 3 of those recordings are available through the state library to look at. One of the takeaways from the trustee meeting was that she recommended that organizations have employees go through the employee training as part of their sort of annual training regimen or cycle. And I did suggest that to David in a sort of an out-of-band conversation. So just raising awareness that I found that to be worthwhile, and reminding everyone that's available.
Thank you very much. That's great. Before we move on to future agenda items, does anybody else have anything they'd like to add to other matters here? Okay. Let's see, future agenda items that we've discussed today. Continuing education with the auditors. A vote next month. It sounds like we'll probably be ready for the vote on policy 4.32 on ILL. I'm drawing a blank on what the third one that we had.
Was
Maybe a-
David's update?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. That's exactly what it was. And David, if you wouldn't mind preparing that update on the director's goals for our meeting next month. Thank you, Wendy.
And Thomas, a policy committee report as well.
Yes, we'll have a policy committee meeting. That's right. So a report from the committee there. Terrific. And if anybody thinks of anything else in the meantime, let David or myself know, and we'll put the agenda together next month. All right. Well, thank you all again for your time being here today. If there's no other business to come before us, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I so
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for your time.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it
Thank
as
you
always.
again.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Stay warm.
Yes.
My phone at one point said it was drizzling. And I
Uh-oh.
was really? No.